Hi, and welcome to Queens Behind the Scenes. I'm your host, Sharice Beckett, and this is the space where we empower queens to lead, transform, and shine in all areas of life, whether it's career, health, relationships, or personal growth. This podcast is your go to for inspiration and empowerment. Sometimes it'll just be us having those real relatable chats about goals and challenges and everything in between. And then other times I'll be bringing you incredible guests, leaders, change makers, and experts who share their wisdom and stories to help us level up. And speaking of incredible, I am beyond excited to introduce today's queen, Tricia Dunlap. She is someone who knows what it means to pivot, persevere, and start fresh with purpose and grace. Formerly a high school history and government teacher in Virginia and Florida, she took a bold leap and entered law school at 40 years young, redefining what it means to follow your heart and live authentically. Her story is a testament to the power of reinvention, and I can't wait for her to share her journey with us. Please join me in welcoming the inspiring Tricia Dunlap. Let's dive in. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Sharice. That was a nice introduction. I appreciate that.
Well, my one girlfriend, I did it, and she was like, I barely recognize myself.
I was having a little bit of a flashback.
Oh, yes. Well, I remember when we met through a mutual friend, and I was just so inspired by you, your energy, and so inspired. I was like, I'm doing this. I'm going to law school too. I'm doing what she's doing. Obviously, that's not my ministry, but wow. You're just incredible. And then I looked on your website. Obviously, I had to go through to catch up with all of your happenings.
You had to
And
do
I
your
saw
homework. Is that it?
I did homework, yes, for
Yes.
this, yes. But also, I was looking at the University of Richmond, their website, and I was like, you were on there, and I just remember I went to a mock trial there and sat in a class, and I remember all of that, and that wasn't my ministry, but it was yours, and you just were so steadfast and so focused. I remember we wanted to hang out with you when you were studying for the bar, and you said exactly
that's
this.
right.
I can't hang out just to be hanging out.
Did I say that?
You did.
Oh, gosh.
You were focused, though. I was like, oh, my gosh. So anyways, how is everything? How is life? How's the law firm, the practice? How's everything?
You know, Sharice, it's amazing. You and I haven't talked in ages, so this is great and for all the guests, I hope that you enjoy while I catch up with my dear friend that I haven't talked to in way too long. But
way too long.
Honestly, the life that I dreamed of when you and I were last hanging out in Chester, Virginia, 15, 16 years ago, it's the life I have now. It's such where I am now in my life is such a testament to setting a vision, deciding what you want in your life and just working toward it every single day and don't lose the faith, never losing the faith.
I love that. And I remember Sharice, that too.
I've got everything that I ever dreamed of.
I look at that, and that is so. I mean, I know that a lot of women that are listening or watching or whatever are going to want to understand how you took that hard pivot. I mean, let's go through. There's not just sacrifices that are this sacrifice to go to school, but you can't really work. That school's your work, right?
Right, and in fact, the American Bar Association has rules for law schools that limit the ability of law students to work while they're in school. I mean, that's not to say you can't do it anyway, but part of the challenge is in law school, people are ranked against each other in a class, and everything's graded on a curve. So if you want to be near the top of your graduating class, which for me, there was no question, I had to be at the top of my graduating class because I was a 40-year-old single mother. I had to have a job at the end of school, so your ability as a law student to be at the top of your class and to do all of the sort of extracurriculars that really position you for a strong start at your career. That's things like working on the Law Review, which is a journal that law schools publish, which is a tremendous amount of work. And it's one of the qualifiers that the largest, largest firms in the world look for when they hire. If you were on law review, you're not even going to get an interview with them. Participating in moot court, doing research fellowships for professors, all that sort of extra stuff. Plus, on top of studying, there's no way you can have a job and do all that too. So, and I made the strategic decision at the start of law school that I was not going to attempt to do some sort of part-time, I was doing all kinds of part-time work before law school. I was waiting tables at a barbecue joint, and I was doing catering gigs, and I was selling perfume, and I was teaching SAT classes on top of teaching, because that's how it is when you're a teacher.
Yeah.
But going to law school, I made the just strategic decision that I would not work unless it was a law, a career enhancing opportunity to work. And that made it scarier. It made it harder. It made it more expensive. I don't even know how much debt I was in when I graduated. I was too afraid to look at it.
That sounds like me with just regular education. I didn't even go to law school. That's like me with my master's degree.
It's paid off now.
Exactly. That's the thing is like I just, I think there's so much we have to dig in. So I want to start with like, what motivated you to take to make this significant change? I know there were a lot of personal aspects. You just have such an inspiring story. So start where you want to start.
Okay. Well, I guess it starts with, and this is maybe something that a lot of women can relate to, right? And I'm now 56. So, I came of age during the Reagan era. I came of age in the, late 70s, early 80s when women had made a lot of progress in the 70s. And in the 80s, there was a tremendous backlash against that progress. And so I sort of grew up in this really tumultuous time when the narrative was women can do everything, but you better not, kind of. So there was a lot, it was super confusing. And I didn't have a whole lot of confidence as a young woman. And I just, quite frankly, I married the wrong man first time around. That's just, it happens. It happens to a lot of women, especially when we don't believe in ourselves and we don't even know who we are. And so we look to a man to define us, and we look to a man to give us some sort of standing in the world, right? As a person.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I did. So I was 16 when I met him. He was older. I won't get into details about that. We do have 2 kids together, so I just want to be respectful of all of that.
Of course.
Let's just say that there was not a healthy, respectful power dynamic in that marriage.
Yeah.
And by the time I was in my early 30s, I outgrew it, and that's when it ended. But one of the consequences of my decision to marry at just barely 19 years old was that, first of all, I went to 3 colleges to get my bachelor's degree because I was following his job. And I went to 3 schools in 4.5 years, which I still look back on that and going, how? Anyway, my professors at the time, I had several professors who were saying to me, you really should go to law school. Like the way you think, the way you pick things apart, the way you analyze things, you'd be a good lawyer. And that sort of lit a little fire in me, but that was not going to happen in the marriage that I was in. So, when I was about 20 years old, that's when I was getting that feedback from my professors, and it just sort of stayed with me, like it was sort of this, it just didn't leave me. Yeah. And then I got divorced in my early 30s, which was just terribly traumatic. And anyway, I would definitely do that differently if I could do it again today. Yeah. But divorced in my early 30s, and the same year that I divorced, like my husband at that time, first husband, moved out in January of 2003, and I bought him out of the house. He signed the deed over to me in like February, which is baffling to me. I don't know. This is why I believe in God, because it was supposed to happen this way. But then in May, the house flooded for the first time. And I say first time because then it flooded again in September.
Oh,
gosh. Anyway, it put me in this just survival mode. Like every day was a street fight just to get through it and to figure out like, okay, what do I do with flood insurance? And what do I do with, the local government was, anyway, it was just fighting on every level to just sort of get through this crazy time. And by the time that took several years for that all to sort of work through the system. After the second flood, I swore to myself that I would not put my children back in that house. Their dad moved out in January. They are trying to adapt to a whole new family structure. And then they lose their home in May because it floods. And they went to stay with their dad. And I lived in a friend's apartment. And I'm like scrambling to build the house back because I wanted to get my kids back.
Right.
I was worried about the custodial impacts of them being with. So I got them back within about 6 weeks. We're back in the house. And then in early September, the weather forecasters were saying, hey, there's a hurricane coming. It's heading right for Central Virginia. Isabel. Yes.
I remember my son was turning 1. Yeah.
That's right. Well, I remember.
Or 3. My son was turning 3.
Well, I remember you had restarted your...
I had restarted my life.
You did. So at any rate, the minute the forecast said that Isabel was targeting Central Virginia, I was like, we're going to flood again. Like I knew this house would flood again, just because there was a creek in the backyard and the house should never have been built. But it was built back in the 50s before there was zoning, before there was floodplain mapping, all this kind of stuff. So anyway, I was like, pack it up. I'd teach school during the day and then I'm packing the house. And I'm like, well, but here's the challenge with a flood. Do you move things on the first floor up to the second floor? Or like, what if the flood's really bad? You don't know how bad a flood is going to be, right? Know. So you don't know. So do you move it out? And I had no money. I do want to be clear about this, right? Like,
I had no money.
Like I had no money. I was a high school teacher. I was working 2 and 3 jobs. So it's not like I could just, hire hire a moving crew or, rent a storage unit. I couldn't afford that.
You didn't have the resources. Yeah.
Didn't have the resources. So it was all DIY, just like, I don't know, just trying to hold it together. So then after Isabel hit, I was like, okay, that's it. I am never putting my children back in that house again. Never. And I got FEMA assistance to help me pay for an apartment because I'm still paying mortgage on this house that we can't live in. And I started doing research because it wasn't just my house. It was like 5 houses total. And all of them were chronic flood properties. All of them were a drain on taxpayer resources because, FYI, taxpayers underwrite flood insurance. So every time there's a claim on flood insurance, it comes out of our pocket, really. So anyway, FEMA has this grant that pays it pays the locality a set amount of money to buy out the houses that are chronic flood properties because it's cheaper to buy out those houses, demolish them, and then prohibit redevelopment of that land. That's cheaper than it is to keep paying flood insurance claims. So I went to the county and I'm like, hey, this is a great solution for all 5 families here. And it saves the county money because you don't have to send out the firefighters to evacuate us and all this stuff. And deaf ears, blind eyes, like not even talking to me. And I just wouldn't go away. Like it's the only solution, right? Otherwise it's like bankruptcy and foreclosure. And, are we even going to survive that? So I was just a bulldog. And
I know you were.
Think about it. When your back is up against the wall, right? Like, and
you've got these kids, you got to have a house for your children.
That's right. I was going to take care of my children. So anyway, I just wouldn't go away. Finally, in January of 2004, and this is like almost 4 months after Isabel had hit, Chesterfield County agreed to apply for the grant. So that was great. So that though took a year and a half. It's federal government. This is how it works. Yeah. So, and it was a competitive grant. So other localities were applying for it, but ultimately Chesterfield did win. And by 2004, I knew that my FEMA assistance to pay for the apartment was ending, but the grant money hadn't come through yet. So I still had a mortgage on this house, and I was going to lose housing for my kids. So I had to solve that problem. And I actually found a house at auction right near the high school where I taught that was high up on a hill, no water in sight. And I figured out how to buy that, which at the time, it just blows my mind how that all came together, which again is sort of one of the roots of my faith that, you know, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, really has our back.
Oh, God has our back. God got you.
For sure. I totally believe that, you know.
Yeah.
So long story short, I was able to get a bridge loan that paid off the mortgage on the flooded house and gave me the money I needed to buy the house at auction. And I bought that house in October of 2004, and my kids had a new home by Christmas of 2004.
Doesn't it make you cry now thinking about?
That was a moment of real pride for me, you know, to do that for them. We'd had such a horrible couple of years. So anyway, by 2005, middle of 2005, the grant money had come through, and we're working through like the buyout of the house and all that stuff. So by 2006, my life had settled down again. I was just back to teaching and working multiple jobs and taking kids to soccer and, you know, hanging on to the middle class by my fingernails kind of life, which so many single mothers can relate to, right?
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Been there.
I mean, I remember when we moved into the house that I bought, you know, at auction. I remember probably the first month, every night I'd go to bed and think, I have no idea how I'm going to pay this mortgage, but at least we got a house for now. Like,
girl,
please.
and I get it. I swear, before Rich and I got married, and I was in a similar circumstance before that, like, same thing is like, every month I would be like, oh my gosh, like, you're just
how am I going to do it this month?
But let me tell you this is a testament to just your faith and believing, because at this point, and even then, I always would just be like, it'll work out. Like, it doesn't have a choice. Like, it's gonna either work out or it's not. And we're not the type of people that's gonna let it not work out.
Yeah. And, you know, and so I worked really hard during that time period. You know, like I literally at times I was working 3 part-time jobs in addition to teaching, you know, particularly during the holiday season, because that's when perfume sales are hot, which by the way, you're working directly for the perfume company, like for Coty and for Macy's, you're making really good hourly. Anyway, that was a great, but then I'm also doing catering gigs, right? Because that's when that's busy. So anyway, it was crazy. Fast forward to 2007, and I'm actually like, I'm kind of bored at this point. You know, I'd been teaching for about 12 years at this point, and I had 18 more years to go. And I'm bored, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm starting to turn into the teacher. Like, everybody can think back on a teacher that they remember that person really hated the job. Right.
Oh, yes, yes.
And they didn't enjoy the kids. And although I always enjoyed the kids, I love the kids. But like when a teacher doesn't want to be there anymore, it's really hard to hide that. And I was starting to turn into that person. And then I went and visited and hung out one weekend with a friend of mine who had known me we've been friends since 1994. And her name's Perry. And I went to see her in Asheville, North Carolina, and we're hanging out, watching the sun go down, killing a bottle of wine, you know, typical girl stuff. Mm-hmm. And she says to me, totally sandbags me out of the blue. She says, what's one thing that you're going to die without doing that you've always wanted to do? And I said, go to law school. Which, if you think about it from a spiritual point of view, that's a pretty dubious answer. But nevertheless, that was my answer to her inquiry. And she said, well, why can't you go? And I'm like, are you kidding me? I don't have any money. You know, like I got some equity in my house, and mind you, that was 2007. You might remember what happened in 2008. Nobody had equity in their house after 2008.
I had some equity.
Yeah, I had equity in 2007. So I'm like, well, I got a little equity, but other than that, like, I don't have any money. And she said, well, you can take student loans. That's what people do. And I bet your parents would maybe at least help with the kids or whatever. And I'm like, she said, look, just take the LSAT. Just promise me you'll take the LSAT. And I did. And I did well, you know, and she was like, so apply. I was like, okay. So I applied, and it was just like quicksand, you know. I applied, I got in, and now we're in the spring of 2008. And I was talking to my parents, who I've lost them both in the last couple of years. And boy, I couldn't have done it without them. Really couldn't have done it without them. They, my mom in particular, you know, spring of '08, and I'm at this moment, it's like May, I've been accepted. I have to make the deposit. I have to get ready to take out the first round of student loans, which is like $50,000,
Yeah.
right? And it's, once you're in, you're in. You know, there's no, the only way is to get to the other side and get that degree, because how are you paying that off if you don't finish school?
If you don't
right?
finish, yeah.
Right, exactly. So I'm talking to my mom, and I'm like, I don't know, Mom, you know, maybe it's too big, it's so risky. And she said, Tricia, a year from now, if you don't do this, are you going to regret it? And I said, yes. And she said, well, there's your answer. You have to go. And thanks, Mom. So, and my parents were awesome. I have to give them, I won the lottery when it comes to parents.
Yeah.
And like they had this happy little retired life in Southern Maryland. They had a boat. They were going out on the boat every weekend. They literally came and lived in my house for the 3 weeks of exams and took care of the kids and the dogs and drove people to wherever they had to go so that I could focus and study for my exam period. Like that's, so yes, I had help, and I'm so grateful for that. And I believe you've got to, you can't just sit back and wish for things to happen in your life,
No.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have, when the inspiration comes, you have to do the actions required to manifest that, to fulfill that. But if you ask for the inspiration, it will come.
It will come.
And when the inspiration comes, that's when you just know, you know, when what you want to do is the right thing for you, like in a cosmic sense,
Yeah.
things fall into place. That's been my whole life experience. You know, if you're trying to do something that isn't for you, you'll hit barriers.
So many roadblocks.
Right? Roadblocks will come up all over the place, here and there and here and there, all of which are signs that you're just moving in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe you think you should be doing something because your ego tells you, right? But like, if you're aligned with what's right for you in a cosmic sense, then things just, right? Most of the time. That's not always true, because sometimes you also have to grow as a person to be a big enough person to receive what it is you want. So that's
it's so true. It's so true. I heard somebody, I think Tyler Perry said it the other day, but he was talking about other people, but it is true just in general. And when you get so high, and he was talking about like how you can't take everybody with you, and some people can't survive at that altitude that you're at. And like the altitude that you want to be at, when you want it, you might not have been able to survive there, but when it's time, it's time, right?
Yep. That's exactly right. You know, and I don't think God or the universe brings us anything that we're not ready for.
Exactly.
And so, you know, if on the one hand you have this dream, and by the way, if it's something that's like been on your heart and has lived on your heart, and if it's the kind of dream that surfaces in the middle of the night when you can't sleep at 2 a.m. and you start thinking about, oh man, I wish I could do, or well, it's on your heart for a reason. It's on your heart because God put it there. Basically.
It's true. It is. I mean, I've wanted to do this for 3 years. So just even to give you an outline of like, so similar 3 years, I kept talking about how I was going to do this and how I was going to, and literally I'm in an executive role. And so my direct reports, when I told them I was doing this, they were like, finally, it's been 3 years. You've been talking about this. And I was like, that is not the type of person. Usually if I want to do something, I do it. Like I don't really wait. But the older I've gotten, the more thoughtful and more deliberate I am about the things I want to do. But this was on my mind because I was like, what do I want to do? Like, do I want to be famous or something? You know what I mean? I'm like, do I want, but I'm like, yes, in my own way, like not like I need to have the paparazzi flying, but what do I want? I want to be able to empower women. I want to be able to give people the gift of what I've been given, which is like knowledge, people like you, like that, like, and that was the thing that I said when I was going to bring on folks for this month of like starting something new or starting a new chapter, are people that have really like influenced and really touched me, and you were prime for that, because even though I did not go to law school, and even though, and I did do great on the LSAT too, but it wasn't for me, but you inspired me to do so much more like than
Mm,
even that, you know what I mean? Like I was like, I'm gonna be, you know what, I'm in this corporate world and I wanted to do HR so bad.
I remember.
I I was like, I wanted, this is like way back. And I was like, I wanted, but even like, and then when I got to doing HR, I was like, I want to be an executive and I wanted to do this and that. And so I've been able, and like you said, I'm living everything that I wanted. I'm living everything of that out. I have an amazing husband. I have these amazing kids who are, again, successful. You know, and now I can empower other people to be able to let their dreams come true and allow their dreams to come true. And you said it just like that. If there are all these obstacles, not saying you're not going to have to go through shit to get what you want, right? Like we know that. But like I noticed when it's not for me, it is, I can tell when it's not for me, because I'm like,
Right.
okay, this is happening and this is happening and this is happening. Like if this is supposed to be for me, I should not have to go through all of this, like
Right. Right.
to like get it. And sometimes you do, but like a lot of times it's right in front of you, but it takes like wisdom to get there, to realize, okay, well this might just like not be for me. And then realizing something like your like law school has been, if you say that that's something, I mean immediately law school, I would go there. That is something you need to be doing, like you, and you found a way. And I just remember saying, this woman can do, and she's a smart woman. And you really made me feel like you're smart too. I mean, obviously I am, but like I don't know that I felt like that. And it's just like you. I was too young. I was 19, you know, my first marriage, 19, had a baby, 19. And then you know, I had to make choice. You know, like you said, like with the, like you make choices for the kind of like you don't feel highly of yourself. So you make choices around a man, you know, you make
Right.
that your identity, you know what I
Well,
mean?
and I think for me, at the time when I got married the first time, I was afraid to figure out who I was.
Of course. Yes.
You know, it was like so much easier to sort of graft myself on to this person who was already fully formed
Yeah.
than it was to sort of grapple with that
Because it's
deep
work.
unknown when you're 18, 19, 20, and you have to like go out into the world and
Yeah.
figure out what you're about, you know? And in reality, you really don't get to skip that step
We
as a
don't know.
human. All I did was put it off for a dozen years.
We
You
did. We
know?
just put it on. Well, because you have to, because you know what that is? It's work. And because you have to
It's hard
reflect, you got
work
to
and
think about
it's
it.
scary.
It's such
It's
hard work. It's
scary.
so scary.
You know, that's the other thing too that we have to remember is that the fear is such a huge distortion field.
It is.
And when we make decisions out of fear, in my experience at least, they are almost inevitably wrong.
Always.
They never come out right if a decision is made out of fear. If I'm making a decision because I want to avoid a hard conversation, or if I'm making a decision because, you know, I don't really know what I'm doing in that area, and you know, it's going to come out wrong. You know,
It does.
you have to make a decision out of integrity, and fear distorts and pulls you away from integrity.
It
So
does. Yeah.
anyway,
No, I talk about fear and doubt on here all the time, because I was like talking about how fear and doubt stopped me from doing this. I was scared that I was going to, so scared that I was going to make a fool out of myself, or, oh my gosh, I can't put myself out there, or, you know, and I see women do that all the time, like what I'm doing all the time. And I'm like, I know that I'm able to, but fear will keep you from your biggest dreams. And I mean,
absolutely.
it really will. And fear, making decisions based out of fear, like you know, I used to there was a mentor of mine that used to tell me, um you know, don't run don't run away from something, run towards something. Like,
Yeah.
like jobs or relationships or whatever. Like, don't run away from something. Be running towards something with
Yes.
purpose, right? Like,
Well, and that comes back to, I think I said this at the top of the show, set a vision for your life,
yep.
right? Like if I were to say to you, where do you want to be 3 years from now? Right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if you don't really have an answer to that, then that's your first work,
Yep.
right? Is to figure out what the answer to that is. And, listen, you may not be where, whatever you say today, you may not be there. Here's what I'm going to bet. Okay. You're going to be, if you set that vision and you say 3 years from now, I want my life to look like, right? Like I will say to you right now, 3 years from now, this is what I want my life to look like. Okay. I want to be living almost entirely. We have a place in the mountains that we got 4 years ago. And we have a little tiny cabin out there now that we've built, and it's just raw land. So it was nothing. So it's been a crazy adventure, so much fun, but so much that has not gone according to my plan. But 3 years from now, I want to be living out there primarily in the house that we are hoping to build this year. And I want to be running this firm. I want it to be significantly larger than it is now. I am currently on the hunt for talented attorneys who want to join a fantastic team. And we're doing some really cool stuff at this firm. We're disrupting the traditional model of legal services, which I'm super excited about, and really working hard to expand access to legal counsel for small business owners. So
I love that.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. And we just do things differently than typical lawyers, and we don't talk like typical lawyers. So at any rate, I really would love to have 10 to 12 attorneys, whereas, right now we have 5 total. So I'd like to double the size of the firm in 3 years. And I want my husband and I to be able to travel, and to travel nicely, because he's 6'7", and so he's got to have, a nice seat on the plane.
Yeah, nobody's sitting in the spirit seat.
He cannot fly to Italy in coach.
No.
You need the jaws of life to get him back out of there when we land, so it doesn't work. So like 3 years from now, that's what I want. So here's the thing in my life experience, right? You set that vision, and that's what you're working toward. And then you get to 3 years from now, and you're like, oh, it's better than I thought. Right? Like, but it first starts with the vision, and you can almost guaranteed you're not going to actually hit the vision you set, because you will probably have so much more than what you could even imagine for yourself. So it's like, okay, this is my vision.
Yeah.
It's this or something better.
I love that. Well, because, that my guest before you, Makisa, she literally says vision. She was like, you have to start out. She started a new business, and it's a proactive wellness business, and she's doing great things. And she said, you have to start out with a vision, or you just are spinning your wheels, right? Like if you don't have a vision of what you actually want. And that's why, like, for me, it's important to like visualize every year. I try to visualize what I'm going to do with the year. Like, right. Like, okay, what do I want to get done? Well, I know this year, my husband and I, we're buying a house because we're moving back to Richmond.
Oh, that's good. Love it.
Yeah. So like, okay. So like building a house. So we have that in store. My son's going to be switching schools. So we know that the transition is not going to be easy. It's going to be, but we want to travel. But since we're buying the house, we'd like to install a pool. We have those things. For me professionally, I really want the podcast to take off, because essentially I would like to have my own kind of network, or hosting website.
Circle of influence.
I would love to be able to influence women or people who are interested in hearing about being motivated and really want to understand how to achieve your goals. And I did have somebody say, what makes you qualified to be a personal success coach? And I was like, well, I'm successful, and also I've raised two really successful children. One's a nurse practitioner, and one of them is in managing sales. So like, I definitely feel like I am qualified, especially since I started raising them when I was 19. So,
right.
So I'm pretty qualified, but also I do have the success or the coaching from my master's degree in OD. But you have people ask you that. But I do want to ask you one thing about fear and about just like what you were thinking of when you made a transition, because like you talked about fear and doubt. Like, were there moments where you felt like giving up, and what kept you going?
Oh my God. So there's one moment in particular where I'll never forget it, actually. I was in my second year of law school, and it's the fall. It was the fall of my second year of law school. And law school is a 3-year program, for those who aren't aware. And the adage about law school is the first year they scare you to death, the second year they work you to death, and the third year they bore you to death. So I was in the middle of the work you to death year. And I was on law review, and I was on the moot court board, and I was taking a full load of classes. And my son, he started 6th grade the year I started law school. So he was a middle schooler, and he was just a passionate baseball player. And he wanted
Joe, yes, your son.
You remember Joe, right?
I do. So, he was hanging out with Jason and Drew.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. So Joe wanted to play travel ball, which at that point, and personally, I'm not a fan of any of the travel sports, because I think they just have such a distortive impact on the family. Anyway.
We did it too. Yes, it's not great.
So, but he really wanted to do it. And so I agreed for him to try it one season, and we signed up for a team that was technically travel, but it was like kind of regional travel. So anyway, one weekend we drove to Gloucester, Virginia, which is about an hour and a half from, where we lived. And he had a doubleheader on Saturday and a doubleheader on Sunday. And, Charisse, we're living off of student loans, I couldn't afford a hotel room. So we camped, and it's like September in Virginia, which is hot. And it's in Gloucester, which is like
by the water.
Yeah. And there's a lot of water, which means there's a lot of mosquitoes, right? That's Saturday night. So I'm literally sitting at the baseball diamond during his doubleheader, and I have 2 3-inch thick binders of law review articles that have been submitted by people, generally professors, who have written on some legal topic, and they're hoping to be published in the University of Richmond's Law Review, because if you're a professor, you got to be published and all this stuff. And it's my job to edit these articles. And I'm literally sitting in front at the baseball diamond, and I'm like trying to pay attention to when my son's going to be up at bat and trying to edit this article. And we get back to the campsite on Saturday night, and it's like blazes hot. And I had a kerosene lantern, and I'm literally sitting at the picnic table at like 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday after being at a doubleheader all day, editing a law review article. And I had this moment of like, what the hell am I doing? Like, this is insane. But here's the thing. What kept me going? What kept me going is that I was almost halfway through law school. I had already taken out, I don't know, $125,000 in student loans, right? Like, what am I going to do? Quit? Quitting wasn't an option. Quitting was not an option. And in fact, the economy fell apart in 2008.
Yeah.
I started law school in August, and then it literally disintegrated in October.
Oh yeah, it did.
And I graduated in 2011 into one of the worst legal job markets in 100 years. And so part of what I did all through law school was I networked. I joined the Richmond Bar Association. I started going to Bar Association events before I even started law school. Like I was everywhere that I could network.
I love that.
And I worked as hard as I could to be as close to the top 10%. I was just outside of the top 10%, which nobody cares after you're graduated, but when you're looking for a job, it matters, right?
It does, yeah.
So like I was all in. And I should probably apologize for a lot of my fellow students during that era because I was probably a little intense in class, let's just say, because the stakes were so high,
Yep.
for me. I had to have a job when I graduated.
Period. That's it.
And I'm not talking about a job waiting tables. Like
I need
I
a
had
real
to have
job.
a legal job
Yeah.
when I graduated. So, the pressure was really intense, and it was just take it day by day, try not to go crazy. And I had a couple of really good friends, one of whom I was in law school with who has since passed. And then I had good friends like you and Brittany and, the Chester girls.
Yes,
Who,
the Chester girls.
if I needed help with my kids or whatever,
of course.
So I had a support team that was fantastic, that I'll never forget. But there are times in your life where you just have to have the grit and the endurance, and you just don't give up.
Yeah.
You just don't.
You just don't.
The stakes are just too high,
You just don't. Yeah.
And here's the thing. Here's the good news. Anybody listening, ladies, gentlemen, they, them, everybody. Everybody. Here's the good news. The more you do that in your life, the better you get at it.
Yep.
Right? So like the level of grit that I had to have to get through law school it prepared me for my first job out of law school.
Yeah.
Right? And then 3.5 years later, when that job turned out to be the wrong job and it was time for me to start Dunlap Law, it prepared me for that. Right?
Yeah.
And like all along the way, that it gets easier and easier because you get bigger, you get stronger, and you get to the point where your problems aren't problems, they're challenges.
They're just
challenges. Yeah. You got to figure them out. You got to ask for help. You got to talk to people who are smarter than you are.
Yep.
And you don't give up. But you get to the point where like the sort of soul crushing fear isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
And now it's just like, okay, I know what I got to do now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I could see. Similarly, I interned when I went back to college after my first husband passed away, and committed suicide. I literally went back to school and I said to myself, I was like, I don't care. I signed up to be an intern. Everybody else was like 19, 18. I was 24. I didn't even care. I don't care. Like everybody else was like talking. They were like going after, after work, they go to, I couldn't go to anywhere. I had to go pick up my kids. And guess what? I wasn't really even making any money at my internship because guess what? They had to go to daycare. Really, all I was doing my internship for was a job later.
Yeah.
Like, that was
the
it.
Work experience. Yeah.
I just needed the work experience. If I needed a job, that I had a place where I interned where they could say, oh, she does a great job or whatever. That's what I did. So I understand. I totally get that. And it does make you better. Now I will say that it makes you better. The hustle makes you better, but you do get tired. I mean, at least me. So I have to find out about you. Like, do you ever want to, after all that, like the grit you had to have, all of the, the struggle, the sacrifice, how hard it is to just do what you did. Do you ever say right now, like, I want the soft life? Sometimes I just want to be like chilling and I want the soft life. Do you ever think like that?
I totally have those moments. Absolutely. Okay. And I will say this is another piece that I think is key for me. So for what it's worth, the last 3.5 to 4 years have been super, super tough for me. For a number of reasons. We had, I hired an accountant that I shouldn't have hired.
Yeah.
Okay. And
say less.
Yeah. Well, they made mistakes with our books for a period of about 18 months. And so I didn't even know the mistakes were happening for 18 months. All the financial reports I was getting were like not accurate. And I finally figured it out after about 18 months. But that really put the firm into a tough situation. This is 2022. And that was the same year that my dad, his body just sort of slowly started failing, like every major organ system, one after another. And then he died in November of 22. My mom had Alzheimer's. And so, making sure she was cared for. And then she died in July of this past year. And you're talking to me at a time period where I have sort of just come out of a tunnel, another tunnel of like hard.
Yeah.
And one of the things that helped me get through that is that I've got this property out in the mountains where certainly the first year that we owned it, we didn't even have electricity. We didn't have electricity, didn't have running water. There's no cell phone service. There's no internet service, and it was and is a restorative place for me. It's a place of quiet. It's a place of calm. And when I say quiet, I mean, like you hear nothing.
Is this in West Virginia, you said?
It is, yeah.
Oh, it's where I'm from. So, yeah, I'm sure you don't hear nothing. You probably see nothing.
Oh, my God. Oh, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. I just don't even have words for the natural beauty that is West Virginia.
It's gorgeous. It's so gorgeous. I will say that growing up, I did grow up around some of the best backdrops and such gorgeous backdrops.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, I think it's important when you are going through that sort of stretch where you're just like heads down and you're hustling and you're building, you've got to build in time to rest. You've got to build in time to disconnect. And I really mean it. Like, leave your cell phone behind because you will not rest if you have your cell phone. You won't. So,
it's true.
Like, you have to build that in for yourself in order to get through it. That's been my experience, at least. So that's part of it. And I do still have days now, and we're on the other side of the accounting malpractice. Thank goodness. And here's the thing, I talked earlier about how sometimes you have to grow, right? Well, I had to grow as a business owner. I had to grow as a CEO. I had to get really gritty and really serious about, like, how am I going to turn this business around?
Yeah.
Right.
And you have to have a strategy for it, right?
We had to have a strategy, and, and we created a strategy and we executed on it. And that's why, the firm is now doing great today. So, we're back to profitability and it's really strong. And, so we are gangbusters at this point, but it was a tough stretch and I had to grow again, but here's the thing in your life, when you stop growing, you're dying.
Yep.
So the thing is, it's like these plateaus. You grow and you grow and you grow, and it's really hard. And then you get a little bit of a rest and a little bit of a plateau. And then, God willing, you'll get another growth opportunity.
Yeah. God willing. Yeah.
So that all comes back to this whole question of, do you ever want the soft life? And there is going to come a point when I'm ready to stop being a business owner, right? Because that's its own kind of unique way of challenge and exhausting and that sort of thing. That said, I have a vision for where I'm taking this firm, and I need, at least another 5 or 6 years to build out that vision. And so I'm very intentional. I'm very serious about the vision that I'm building, and I'm going to do it. So in moments when I'm really tired, I'll get a little whiny, I'll be like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. My husband will be like, stop it. You're building something you believe in. So
that's right.
Stop whining. I'll be like, okay, fine. That said, even when my days at Dunlap Law are over and when the next generation has taken this firm, I don't know that I'll have a soft life because I got other stuff I'm going to do.
So it ain't going to be too soft.
No, it's never going to be too soft. Because think about it. If your life is too soft, then you're just, I don't know, you lose opportunities to grow.
I think you're right. I mean, I definitely want a softer life at some point, but I'm the same way. I can't keep my hands out of doing things. So like, and I feel like I have these talents. I'm like, the world needs them. The
We
world
do. The world does
needs a
need
little
it.
Charisse.
Listen, everybody needs a little Charisse.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I am so excited that we got to have this conversation. I have one last question if you
Okay.
are open to answering it. What would you say to someone who feels like they're stuck in a life path or a career or anywhere that they no longer feel fulfilled? What would you tell them?
You're not stuck. You're not stuck. You just think you are,
Yep.
and we have to remember that the purpose of our mind, the purpose of our brain, like from a biological standpoint, our brain's job is to spot danger and risk and to keep us safe. So our brain, I don't know if you know this, but
I don't know that.
our brain scans our environment for threats every 4 seconds.
What?
Yes. It's from the saber-toothed tiger days. It's from the, survival parts of our brain that, like literally the job of that part of our brain is to detect threats to our physical safety from our environment. Okay. Well, let's think about it. In our modern world, how often are we in some sort of physical danger? Pretty rare, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
besides me, I ride the metro every day, but yeah.
Okay, valid. But it's relatively rare that we're truly in a dire physical threat. Okay.
Yeah.
What that means is that our brain its job is to look for threats.
Yeah.
So in the absence of an actual threat, our brains are going to tell us, oh, well, you better be careful about that. That could be dangerous. That idea you have for leaving your job and doing something else, or that idea for changing your career, or that could be dangerous. Don't do that. It's not a good idea, right? And that's not to say that your brain is wrong, right? Because nobody should make a big leap without doing their due diligence. You have
For
to be
sure.
responsible.
Yeah,
right?
you can't just do whatever. Yeah.
I didn't just like willy-nilly go to law school without any kind of plan. Like I had a whole financial plan in place. It kind of fell apart when the economy fell apart, but
You
I
tried.
put a new plan. I had a new, and then I made a new plan.
You had to
right?
pivot.
You have to pivot. So you have to do your diligence, and you have to be smart about it, and you have to come up with a plan to the extent that you can control it. Right. And then you have to say, I literally I still have moments of fear, right? I mean,
be safe.
It's not like my brain is finished telling me about all the threats in my environment, which actually don't exist. So it's about managing the fear. And so my conversation with myself is, because we're actually not our brain, we're not our mind. Like I'm a big fan of Eckhart Tolle. If you haven't read Eckhart Tolle,
I'll have to read.
But yeah, The Power of Now and A Whole New Earth.
Yeah, I'll have to read that.
Amazing books. Anyway, the conversation to have with yourself in that moment is, it kind of goes like this. Thank you for trying to keep me safe. I know you're just doing your job, but it's okay. I'm smart. I'll figure it out. And even if things don't go according to my plan, then I'll figure it out again and I'll get a new plan. So it's okay. Brain, like mind, like all the scary stuff you're telling me. Thank you for trying to keep me safe, but it's okay. I got this. And like have that conversation with yourself. It doesn't make you crazy. It actually makes you emboldened, and the ability to just sort of accept the fear. This whole idea that you're fearless, that's ridiculous. Nobody's fearless. Nobody's ever going to be fearless. I think that's impossible. So it's about saying, okay, I see the fear. I accept the fear. I think the fear has no merit. And so I'm just going to like set it over here. And now I'm going this way. And so I think that's how you cope with that, but you're not stuck. Nobody is ever stuck. Humans are inherently hardwired to build and to do. And I think the root of a lot of human unhappiness is when we're not building and doing, is when we stop dreaming and building and doing. And
Yeah.
that's when we start to get unhappy.
I love that. And that's like how about I'm going to play this back and listen to that part because I'm like, that is the best. And let me get this brain talk down.
Read Eckhart Tolle. Read The Power of Now.
Power of Now. I've got to do it. I've got to do it well, my
Well, and I
friend.
will say this, it's a small book.
Oh, good.
If you blast through it, then you might as well not read it.
Oh, okay.
It is a slow read because you've got to read and then you've got to take it in and you've got to ponder it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a very deep read. And if this book, if you encounter this book at a time in your life when you're right and when you're ready for it, you'll
Yeah.
never be the same.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I had a book I just read, Roxy. It's called Manifest, and her name is Roxy. I cannot remember her last name. I always do because I'm always telling somebody to read the book. Nafusi. She, this book is amazing, but it's not a thin book, but it's about this, but it's work during the book. So it was a lot of, I mean, you don't have to do the work during the book, but like it is easier to kind of follow if you do. And so a book that would have taken me probably maybe 3 or 4 days to like read it or listen on audio book, it took me about 3 weeks because I kept doing like the little thing, like, okay, just list five, and I was like, oh gosh, let me like push pause, but it's actually so worth it. So that's another good one by Roxy Nafusi is the
Great.
Manifest book. But it brings us at the top of the hour, which I obviously want to thank my very dear friend Tricia Dunlap, who has this motivational, inspiring story, who inspired me. Like I said, the first people that'll be on the show are those women who have really inspired me to just be better and be a better person and be a better mom and be a better friend and be a better woman. And you'll hear a little more about me in our next episode, which will be in the month of February. We're going to be doing Queen Love Yourself First. And it's
nice.
hard, I know, right? And then the first part is going to be me talking about my journey of success. And, I was a mom when I was 19. I was a widow at 24. So a lot to break down there. And then on the second part of that, I'm going to have a Emmy Award winning author and journalist Tracy Mitchell is going to be with us, and she's going to talk to us about loving ourselves. And I'm sure she's going to be asking me some questions because somehow she always turns into the interviewer, even when she's being interviewed. But I am so excited, and I'm so thankful that I have this tribe of women that I'm able to tap into to tell their stories and who are vulnerable enough to share this with you. So thank you, Tricia, again.
You're welcome.
Everybody, all the queens, go out there, make some magic, never give up on yourself. Queens behind the scenes. We'll see you next time.
All right.